There are 2, maybe 3 lenses that I want Thypoch to add to the Simera-C set, and this is one of them. This is the Thypoch Simera-C 16mm. This gives the set a proper wide-angle lens. Thypoch did send me this lens to test and make a video about, but they're not paying me to make it, and I do get to keep this lens, so keep that in mind when you're watching this video. Here are my thoughts on the 16mm after testing it with the Nikon ZR, the Sony A7V and the FX3. I shot a lot of footage with this lens, so I've just put it throughout the video. I found I love this lens for shooting wide establishing shots, and since it's so small, I can put it in my bag and not notice it when I'm taking it around with me. I wanted to try to shoot something with just this 16mm lens on the A7V and a small travel tripod. Shooting with only a wide-angle lens forces you to get a little creative with camera angles. For the shot where the newspapers were falling between her boots, I set the focus about an inch from minimum, so that gives you an idea of like how close you can focus. And minimum focus, that's like, outside of my office. Here's a quick table of all the minimum focus distance for each of these lenses in the set. I absolutely love that they were able to work on the minimum focus for the 16mm. The 16mm is a T1.9 compared to the other lenses in the set that are T1.5. I think for a wide angle, T1.9 is totally fine for how I use them. At 1.9, you can still get some separation if your subject is close enough to your camera, and the tight minimum focusing distance lets you get even closer. When it comes to price, I'm not sure what the 16mm is going to actually cost. The other M-mount lenses cost $959 per lens. The E-mounts are a little cheaper, but I would advise getting the M-mounts and just using an adapter for them. If you use the link in my description, you can actually get 5% off, and it's like $50 a lens, which really adds up if you're buying multiple lenses at a time, just saying. Assuming the lens costs $959 and they rent from ShareGrid for $40 per lens, it would take 24 days to pay these off. This is subjective, but I like the look of these Thypochs, so they kind of sit at that sweet spot of like price and something that I could buy multiple focal lengths of. Before we get into the color comparison, I want to thank today's video sponsor, Audiio. I love Audio's catalog of music, stems, and sound effects. They're constantly adding new tracks and sound effects, so I love that there's always something new. They also have search tools that help you find exactly what you need. Link Match allows you to paste a link from YouTube or Spotify. Their tools will analyze the song, then recommend songs that you can license and use in your projects. If you want to describe what you're looking for, you can tell Hans and they will give you a list of songs to choose from. I love these tools because it speeds up discovery and I can quickly find songs that will fit the vibe of my video. Audiio is offering my viewers 70% off of their first year of Audiio Pro, making it just $59 a year with my code Keith70, or use the link in the description. Thank you, Audiio, for sponsoring this video. For the colors of the 16mm compared to the other Thypoch Simera-Cs, here are some vector scopes you can check out. I know some people hate these, but I don't know of any other way to accurately show color cast. So you can pause and read into these a little bit more if you want to. For the flare, I was surprised at how well these lenses handled the flare. It's not washing out the entire image. I like them, but that's totally subjective. For the bokeh with this lens, there's some interesting things happening here. Wide open, the bokeh seems to be a little more circular than when you stop it down to T2 or T2.8. Around T5.6, it starts to become round again. Just cruising through the bokeh tests and thought that was interesting. These lenses come in M or E mount. I think it's worth picking them up in the M mount and then using an adapter, because then you can use them on multiple different camera systems. I initially borrowed a set of Thypochs from my buddy Joe, and he had a lesser quality mount. It was a cheap one and it flexed back and forth whenever I put the lens on the camera. Like if I went like this with the other lens, it would actually flex back and forth. However, Thypoch has a locking adapter and this solves that problem. Like if I use a focus motor, it doesn't torque back and forth. This one is actually the L mount. Whenever I had my Pixis 12K, I had it in L mount. It's nice that if I have other camera systems that I can use these lenses on them. I've been slowly working on PL sets of lenses so then I can just adapt them. And it's the same story with these M mount lenses. It's really nice to be able to use multiple sets of lenses on different camera systems. When it comes to size and weight, there's no documentation out there for this lens yet, so I weighed the 16mm at 1.03 pounds, and if you had the locking adapter on there as well, it was 1.21 pounds. The A7V adapter and lens came out to 2.81 pounds, and just for fun, I weighed the 50 to 150, and this came out to 3.21 pounds. So this lens is heavier than this entire camera and adapter and lens and VND. When it comes to filter size for the 16mm Simera-C, this is a 62mm, same as most of the other Simera-Cs. The 75 is a 67mm, so I have 67mm VNDs, so I just use a brass breakthrough 62 to 67, and I just thread this on, and whenever I want to use the 75, I just take this off of my step-up ring and put it on there. It's a very small gripe, it's like a small problem, but I wish they would all just be a consistent filter thread. Even if the filter thread was 67 and they had to make like the front of these a little bit larger to accommodate that, but that's getting really picky. The next thing I was wondering was VND vignetting. And wide angle lenses, I always think like, if I'm using a VND on here, am I gonna get vignetting around the corners? Again, I'm using a step up ring, so the VND is actually a little bit larger, but using a step up ring, 67mm, I haven't had any vignetting on the 16mm throughout the focal range, and it does, spoiler alert, it does breathe a little bit, and I was going throughout the focal range to see like if there's vignetting at the close distance or the infinity distance, and there's no vignetting at the, you know, top or bottom of the focus range either. Quick note about the VND, this is the Peter McKinnon VND. I bought this like 5 years ago. It's the version 1, it's good for what it is, but if I was gonna do this again, I would get the Nisi True Color VNDs. Those don't seem to have any color cast. This one, I was running into some issues, like when I was using it at like the 2 to 5, I was using it at 5. There's just a little more color cast than I would like. So yeah, if you're gonna buy a VND, maybe don't buy the V1 Peter McKinnon, maybe the V2 is better. A very interesting test here is the sharpness in vignetting. I'll just put a title on screen that shows when the center sharpens up, the edges sharpens up, and when the vignetting goes away. Those are really the metrics that I'm interested in at this point. I feel like this lens sharpens up pretty quickly, but that could be because this is T19 and these other lenses are T15 in the Simera-C line. I'm not sure if that's how it works, but that's what my test showed. When it comes to focus breathing, this lens does have some focus breathing. If you're doing large focus racks, you'll be able to notice it. It's not quite as bad as some of the other tighter focal lengths like the 75mm. This one breathes a lot if you're doing focus racks, but how I film with this, I'm typically not doing like, you know, minimum to infinity focus racks. I'm doing like 2 or 3 foot focus racks. So it's a little less noticeable, but it is still noticeable if it's there. One of my gripes about all of these Simera-C lenses is that the focus breathing is a little heavy. I think that was one of the compromises that had to be made with these lenses being so small. And technically they're made after photo lenses, so maybe that has something to do with it. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that's just something that I have to work around. I've really grown to love the Simera-Cs, and seeing a new lens in the lineup really makes me excited for maybe future lenses too. I would love to see a 100mm macro and a 12mm, just saying. I also love that they worked on the minimum focusing distance. That was one of my like 2 major gripes with the other Simera-C lenses. I wish they could do something about the focus breathing. That really only comes into play when you're, you know, doing focus racks. I don't tend to do a lot of those, but if I do have to do them, I try to keep them like under 5 feet. And that's just like a limitation of this lens. Like there's no perfect lens. This is a tiny, you know, very compact set of lenses at an affordable price. So I feel like the focus breathing is one thing that they just had to compromise on. This lens does feel wide, but not so wide that there's heavy distortion. It's like right at that sweet spot. I love these lenses for traveling, and I will definitely be using the 16mm alongside of my other Thypoch lenses. I love that they're introducing more focal lengths, and I can't wait to see what they have for the future. Check out some of my other Thypoch Simera-C videos here, and thank you guys for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.